But look, what did it take for us to get to the point of an apology? We had to threaten a lawsuit, Jesse. And by the way, we're still entertaining it. We're talking to some of the best lawyers out there that are experts in this. And as you know, these things can be very complicated. There's a lot of facts and circumstances around it. But we're not going to let this go, because you should not be able to smear 5,000 high school and college kids and then just be able to walk away with it.
You let them in.
President, open your
You let them in and you knew what they were.
Right.
So you are complicit. I want to make a quick clarification about the neo-Nazis at the Turning Point event. They were outside protesters. My point was more metaphorical, that you embraced them at your thing, I felt.
But Whoopi is certainly not the brightest person. And what she just said just doesn't make any sense. It's just like so silly to say. It's not a well thought out. It's like if you had an idea for a premise and it was totally baked and half baked, and you went on stage with it and it's nothing there.
Things just exploded. Whoopi Goldberg goes off the rails after Joe Rogan and Charlie Kirk team up and completely obliterate her. What triggered this chaos? How did Whoopi spiral from cool to chaos quicker than a live TV disaster? Stay tuned. This sizzling face-off is steamier than your wildest celeb scandal, and believe me, you won't want to...
Welcome back. You know, in Monday's conversation about Turning Point USA, I put the young people at the conference in the same category as the protesters outside. And I don't like it when people make assumptions about me, and it's not any better when I make assumptions about other people, which I did. So, my bad. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So, the state...
You know that feeling when a legendary icon starts to crack. And it's like watching a slow-mo train wreck you just can't look away from. But instead of a simple oops, it spirals into a full-blown media circus. That's exactly what went down when Whoopi Goldberg dove headfirst into the political war zone and got flattened by Joe Rogan and Charlie Kirk. Two fire starters from completely different worlds, each armed with their own verbal nukes, collided. Not officially teamed up.
Charlie Kirk's the founder and CEO of Turning Point USA and the author of the new book, The College Scam. So, Charlie, do you accept the View's apology?
I mean, regardless of whether or not I accept it, the question is, do our students accept it? That's really what's at heart here. They went after our 5,000 students at our event there of high school and college kids. And look, I get attacked all the time. People say false things. I'm a public figure. But when you go after 16 and 17-year-olds that travel from across the country that then have to live for the rest of their life with a shadow over them because someone at ABC says that they might be linked to
absolutely torch Whoopi in ways she never saw coming. Picture this. Whoopi Goldberg, the one-woman storm of pop culture, a legend who's done it all, from Hollywood blockbusters to talk show chaos, chose that moment to speak out on a subject that was basically a political landmine. Maybe it was race, maybe it was politics. Maybe just one of those culture war flashpoints that send people into a frenzy.
The culture shift between right and left authoritarianism, and now people don't recognize that if you just stop looking at it in terms of red and blue, look at the actions, whether it's war, suppression of free speech, pharmacological interventions that are mandatory, right. whatever it is, that used to all be associated with the authoritative right, the authoritarian right, and now those things are being embraced by the left. And I just think it's just an ideology thing, and I think we get confused and we think we're on the right side, we're on the right side, and if it's our side that's saying this, for sure that's the right thing to do, and no one's critically thinking about this.
Joe Rogan is the gateway drug for young men that thought they were Democrats to become MAGA. Joe Rogan is the bridge, and on that bridge they'll see RFK, they'll see Elon Musk.
Whatever she said, it struck the match, and you could practically hear the fuse sizzle before everything blew sky high. Enter Joe Rogan. Not your average media voice. Joe's that wild card in the room who's soaked up 1,000 podcasts, toyed with everything from psychedelic theories to cage fighting, and walks in locked and loaded to shred any nonsense with his raw, no-filter punch.
The reason they felt they needed to do that, Jesse, is because if they told their audience the truth, that when gas is the most expensive it's been, flights are super expensive, that 5,000 kids decided to spend a weekend in summer traveling across the country to go hear from conservative speakers, maybe the audience of The View would think twice about all of their ideas. That's why they felt so compelled to try to smear our wonderful summit this last weekend.
Yeah, they have nothing else to talk about.
He's not in it to smile for the camera or play the nice guy. He's the verbal pit bull who latches, and won't back off till his target's down and begging for air. So Joe catches wind of what Whoopi said, and it's like watching someone try to teach rocket science while wearing oven mitts. Disaster incoming. Joe, with that signature hold, my kombucha swagger, dives into Whoopi's argument. And by dives, I mean obliterates. He tears it apart so brutally, even a mountain of shredded cheese would look neater than what's left. He tosses her points into the meat grinder of logic, douses them in doubt, and sprinkles in a heavy dose of, "You can't be serious." Joe isn't subtle. He's a verbal street brawler. It's not discussion. It's demolition. He's out to expose every crack in Whoopi's logic, with the precision of a surgeon. If the surgeon was holding a chainsaw. Facts? He drags them out one by one. Assumptions? He calls them out like a referee on a power trip. The whole moment turns into a flaming tutorial in public takedown.
Show is that show has this very specific ideological bubble in which they operate in, you know, and they always bring on a token conservative woman and they yell over her and silence her, and, you know, they did that with Meghan McCain, and they did that with the, what is that other blonde woman from Survivor? Do you remember her, Jamie? She was always yelling. I mean, it's just, it's a bizarre show.
Meanwhile, in the opposite corner, here comes Charlie Kirk, the political firestarter, with the speed of a caffeinated auctioneer and punches sharper than a blade straight out of a samurai movie. He's got a whole different heat than Joe. Where Joe's method is slow and relentless, Charlie's all flash and fury, a jab straight to the gut. To Charlie, Whoopi's words aren't just wrong, they're proof of everything he despises about today's pampered media elites. Charlie doesn't bother with pleasantries. He storms in, guns blazing, unleashing a wave of savage critiques that sound like they were penned by a sarcastic teen who just stumbled into political Twitter at 2 a.m. He drags the contradictions, rips apart the performative virtue flexing, and basically crowns Whoopi as the queen of out-of-touch Hollywood hot takes. His words hit, like a runaway train, leaving Whoopi's stance crumpled and gasping for breath. He's not here to gently analyze. He's here to punch the entire premise in the gut and leave it flailing like a joke. Charlie's style? Pure shockwave. It's verbal wreckage delivered with this swagger of someone who knows exactly which buttons spark the biggest firestorm and headline gold. Now here's the twist.
So I hate the whole thing. And frankly, that show, you want to talk about a show that set women back, is The View. You want to talk about that show, if the CIA is engineering, Antifa and fucking the Capitol riot, some crazy misogynist engineered The View, because there's nothing worse than The View. In terms of, like, there are so many brilliant women out there. None of them are on The View. None of them have gone near the set of The View. I mean, they have brought in the lowest tier of the, what is it, the Y chromosome?
No, double X.
Okay.
Double X.
They brought in the lowest of the double X's for that one.
Joe Rogan and Charlie Kirk? They never actually stood side by side. They didn't co-host a takedown, didn't join forces in some epic showdown. Nope. This was two heat-seeking missiles fired from different launchpads, both zeroed in on Whoopi Goldberg's argument, and the aftermath? A brutal double hit that left Whoopi's credibility staggering, like a toddler trying to stand on roller skates in the middle of a hurricane. The internet blew up. Memes spread faster than you could shout, "Whoopi meltdown!" Hashtags exploded like wildfire, and suddenly, Whoopi Goldberg wasn't the untouchable media queen. She became the punchline in a viral storm that even her most loyal fans struggled to defend. But it wasn't just fans who noticed. Media experts, late-night comics, and random Twitter sages all jumped in to pick apart the disaster. How did a legend with decades in the spotlight get dismantled so brutally by two commentators who, honestly, probably wouldn't have crossed paths otherwise? The secret? Two totally different styles and the brutal pressure cooker of today's public discourse. Joe Rogan's meticulous, almost forensic takedown laid bare every crack in Whoopi's case.
Her disgusting, gross elitism and her complete out-of-touch nature with respect to the rest of the world. Sonny Hostin goes on The View and decides now would be a great time to dump all over the so-called uneducated.
What we did not have is white women who voted about 52%, right, for Donald Trump, uneducated white women.
Just because you didn't go to college doesn't mean you're stupid, and it doesn't mean that you don't have wisdom. You can go to college and get a bunch of irrelevant facts about how men can allegedly give birth or whatever they teach. But I said this to our team. I said working people, the muscular class, including working women,
They are so in favor of Trump, and they don't want to be called stupid or uneducated.
Charlie Kirk's aggressive, no-holds-barred style shattered any shred of credibility she clung to, leaving behind a smoldering pile of, what was she thinking? Watching Whoopi try to bounce back was like watching a cat spot the vacuum cleaner again. Confused, panicked, desperately seeking cover. But there was nowhere to hide. The cameras kept rolling, the tweets kept flying, and the whole world was glued to the chaos. Here's a juicy little secret. Whoopi didn't say a word back. No public apology, no damage control, no desperate attempts to clear the air. Just pure, deafening silence. Maybe she was regrouping. Maybe she was questioning her life, choices. Or maybe she just figured the less she said, the better. But that silence? It roared louder than a brass band. It was the sound of a media titan knocked flat by two very different but equally brutal verbal beatdowns. And that's exactly what made this saga so irresistibly juicy. For anyone who lives for a savage takedown, because, let's be honest, watching a media powerhouse with decades of clout get annihilated by two guys who are forces of nature themselves, one armed with deep philosophical grilling,
Doubt.
You're worried about losing your job, and you're worried about podcasts taking over, and who's the source of news, and we said Donald Trump was Hitler, but half the country disagreed with us, and he won, and this is and Joe Rogan believes in dragons. Do you see what Whoopi Goldberg said?
What'd she say?
Whoopi Goldberg said that Biden could arrest all the Republicans and put them in jail. You just need to see how unhinged this kind of thinking is. Well, you know what Joe Biden could do? Joe Biden, you have to see it, because it's so
on TV.
crazy.
She said it's
on television.
the other packing a political grenade launcher, felt like the ultimate underdog story. Except here, the underdogs were giants in their own right. And the giant who fell? It wasn't just anyone. It was Whoopi Goldberg. This wasn't just a one-woman slip-up in the spotlight. It was a snapshot of the cultural battlefield we're all fighting today, where no one is safe from getting called out, roasted, and memed into viral oblivion. The message? No matter how iconic you are, the rules have changed. Step into the ring unprepared, and you're going down, knocked out cold. Ah, the infamous breakdown. Sounds intense, right? Like Whoopi Goldberg, the seasoned media titan, suddenly lost it, turned into a blubbering mess on live TV, clutching tissues and begging for mercy. But what does breakdown really mean here? Spoiler alert. It wasn't some Oscar-worthy sob fest or a meltdown caught like a reality show finale. No, it was sneakier, subtler. A cocktail of visible frustration, shifts in tone, and maybe a hint of, well, this isn't going as planned. Think less soap opera, more slow leak in the confidence tire.
I don't want to say too much, but we're going to have a lot of fun at the Department of Education. We're going to have a lot of fun.
Can I tell you something? Like, I've had quite a few people contact me about that particular post. Like, I'm sure I have 1/100th of what you're getting, but people are contacting me about cabinet posts. I'm like, I got
look,
nothing.
I mean, yeah, I'm actually, after this conversation, heading to Mar-a-Lago for a week, and we have a lot to sift through, and if I could be helpful, I have asked. I want to be actively involved in all things education, as you can imagine.
Picture this. Whoopi, usually the queen of snark and lightning-fast comebacks, struggling to navigate the wreckage left by Joe Rogan's methodical takedown, and Charlie Kirk's verbal sledgehammer. It's like watching a stand-up comic suddenly forget the punchline halfway through their best joke. Awkward, a little cringeworthy, yet oddly hypnotic. Her usually sharp, confident voice faltered just enough to send a subtle but unmistakable signal. This wasn't the breezy commentary we all knew. Was she trying to defend herself? Sort of, but more like tossing a life preserver made of wet noodles. The moves were there, but they lacked that classic Whoopi flair. Instead of snapping back with her usual sharp bite, it felt like Whoopi was tiptoeing through a minefield of facts and counterpoints that kept exploding beneath her feet. She shifted blame, maybe just a little, but in that ultra-polite, let's not point fingers, way only seasoned pros pull off when caught off guard. The real giveaway? Her tone. Less snappy comebacks, more cautious, measured words. Like someone realizing they'd wandered into a totally different arena than expected. This subtle moment quickly became the feud's defining point. See, Whoopi's public image has always been a fortress. Confidence, sharp wit, cultural savvy. She's basically the media's version of that cool aunt who knows exactly what to say and when. But here, the crack showed.
Well, it is the show that people love to hate.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
They get so much hate watching viral clips of them saying ridiculous things. I mean,
Yeah.
it is a rabies infested henhouse.
And in today's brutal media jungle, that vulnerability is like blood in the water. Critics and fans alike pounced. Media analysts called it a classic case of the pressure cooker even the most seasoned commentators face today. Some felt sorry for Whoopi, seeing her as a victim of an unfair hit. Others grabbed their popcorn, thrilled by the rare spectacle of a giant being humbled. When your usual armor cracks, you become an easier target, and suddenly the long game for media longevity looks a whole lot shakier. But here's where it gets truly fascinating. This isn't just a personal blow-up between three media personalities. Nope, it's a microcosm of the raging cultural wars tearing society apart right now. The Whoopi, Rogan, and Kirk saga shines a harsh spotlight on how the battleground has shifted. From hushed editorial rooms and polite panel talks to loud, no-holds-barred arenas where every word is a weapon and every slip-up is magnified 1,000 times over. Joe Rogan and Charlie Kirk represent two powerhouse voices that dominate this chaotic landscape. Rogan's cocktail of skepticism and intellectual curiosity speaks to those exhausted by surface-level sound bites, while Kirk's fiery conservatism rallies a base hungry for bold, unapologetic takes. Whoopi's breakdown is a stark reminder of the brutal pressure on media figures today. Not just to have an opinion, but to survive the relentless digital gladiator arena. In this era where every clip loops endlessly, every comment is dissected, and every reaction is memed, the margin for error shrinks every day. Even the most seasoned pros risk burnout, missteps, or worse, a viral moment that can undo years of carefully crafted reputations. So who won this battle? If winning means walking away unscathed, no one did. But in sheer impact, Rogan and Kirk landed their blows with style and precision. For war, what's next for Whoopi? Likely a period of recalibration, regrouping, and maybe dialing down the hot takes for a while. As for Rogan and Kirk, expect them to keep sharpening their verbal swords, ready for the next target, because if this saga tells us anything, it's that the culture wars are nowhere near slowing down. And the media spotlight? It's only getting brighter, hotter, and far more brutal. For the rest of us, this wild show is far from over. So what's next for Whoopi? Who knows? But one thing's for sure. Joe Rogan and Charlie Kirk just proved that in the age of instant viral destruction, even legends can crumble spectacularly.